Hey guys, come from the Forge here. I want to catch up on what happened at the Forge last night. Last night, we actually finished the book of Joshua. We've been in it for like 9 months going through it, and the making of a man, seeing that through the viewpoint of this man Joshua, who was a great man of God, a great leader, and we have learned a lot from him. And so now we see it coming to a close. And so we covered chapter 23 and 24, last 2 chapters of the book last night. And they include chapter 23, Joshua's farewell address, his final words to the people. And then chapter 24 provides a solemn ceremony for the people before Joshua as kind of the final act of his leadership before he passes away. And so Joshua 23 begins after a long time had passed. And so this is like 25 years after the conquest for the land is over. After a long time had passed and the Lord had given Israel rest from all their enemies around them, Joshua, by then old and well advanced in years, summoned all Israel, their elders, leaders, judges, officials, and said to them, I am old and well advanced in years. You yourselves have seen everything the Lord God has done to all these nations for your sake. It was the Lord your God who fought for you. And so Joshua leads them through this remembrance of all the Lord has done, fighting for them, bringing them up out of slavery, bringing them through the 40 years of wandering, bringing them into the land, fighting against these nations, handing out their inheritances, and blessing them. And then he calls them to act responsibly in light of these gifts, these things that the Lord has done for them. You know, there's always responsibility attached to blessing. You know, we don't just receive. There is a duty, a stewardship over what we receive. And Jesus is real clear on that in the New Testament. Our whole life of following after Jesus Christ, all that he gives to us, all that he blesses us with, is a stewardship that we have to manage and take care of and do well with. And so Joshua here back in the end of this book is calling the people to do the same. Hey, God has done all this. In light of that, man, you need to follow him. And he lays out 5 things. He says you got to be strong. You got to obey the law. You can't get mixed up with other gods and other beliefs and other things that tug at your heart. You got to hold fast to the Lord, and you got to love the Lord. And lays out those 5 things for him. That's their personal responsibility. Very similar to what we saw him exhort the Transjordan tribes with in the previous chapters. But now he gives it to all of Israel that's on the east side of the Jordan. And so he gives them this command. He warns them, hey, disobedience will not turn out well for you. Just like God fulfills all his promises to bless, he will also fulfill his promises to bring discipline if we don't follow after him. That's true for us as well. You know, we have this brand new life in Jesus Christ. It's a life that is assured through our faith and dependence upon him. But yet, if we do not follow him faithfully, if we do not obey him, if we do not serve him well, if we do not follow after the commands of Jesus Christ, then God can bring discipline in our lives in order to get us back on track. And so he makes that same promise to the nation here through Joshua. And so he commands them of all these things. He reminds them a bunch of what we have seen in this book. And then he comes to 24. And this is where I simply want to focus on one thing here, because it's a very simple conclusion to the book of Joshua. Okay, he starts to gather the nation. And so he's given his farewell address. Now he gathers the nation at Shechem, a very key place. It's the place where Abraham was first met by God in the land, and God promised him many sons and many descendants, promised to bring them into this land. And it's a place where Jacob later on would have his people, the 12 tribes of Israel. He would have his people bury all of their idols, all of their foreign gods and points of diversion from the Lord. He had them bury them at Shechem, to be done with them, to be rid of them. We need to do that in our own life. Be rid of all those things that distract us from full devotion to Jesus Christ. And so at this key place, at this sacred place in Shechem, Joshua gathers the people. He gathers them for one last time, one last act of his leadership. And he reminds the people of all that God has done, and then he calls them to make a decision. Okay? He calls them to action. And that's always the way it is. We need to remember all the good that God has done in our lives, all that we've seen him faithfully do, and we need to let that inspire us to our present day actions. And so that's what Joshua is doing here with the people. And so he goes through all the things that God has done, bringing them into the land, all that he's done through 700 years since Abraham. And now in verse 14 he says this. Again, this is the right response to what God has done. There's always a right response to all that we've seen God do in our lives. He says, so do three things. He says, now fear the Lord, 1. Serve him with all faithfulness, 2. And throw away all the gods your forefathers worshipped beyond the river in Egypt, and serve the Lord. Okay? Get rid of all those idols. Get rid of all those things that distract you from following after the Lord. He calls them to do those three things. And then he calls them to a choice. And this is where I want to wrap this up. But if serving the Lord, he calls them, serve the Lord. Last part of that command. Then he says, but verse 15, but if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your forefathers served beyond the river or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. Choose. If you don't want to serve the Lord, choose who you're going to serve. Hey, the reality is for every one of us, we're serving somebody. We're worshiping somebody. We're following after somebody. We're letting things, people, ideas lead us, direct us in this life. We're serving somebody. And so we might as well be clear about it. We might as well have very specific lines drawn as to who it is that we're going to serve, who it is we're going to follow, who it is we're going to base our life on. Joshua says, hey, if you don't really want to serve the Lord, hey, make a choice. Who are you going to serve? But understand, every one of us needs to understand, we are serving somebody. We are serving somebody. Sometimes it's just ourselves, our own selfish desires and ambitions. But one way or another, we're serving somebody. Who are you serving? Who are you going to serve? Joshua, at the end of his life, the last thing he does is he calls his people to decision. He calls them to make a choice. Choose who you're going to serve if you don't want to serve the Lord. And then he makes his great statement that we all remember from Joshua. He says, but as for me and my household, I'm leading my family, I'm leading my household. That's what a man of God does. But as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. That's what we're going to do. We are going to serve the Lord. Guys, that's our choice before us. Who are we going to serve? We're going to be like Joshua. We're going to be like this great man of God and serve him. We all have a choice to make. And here's the deal. We all want to be great men like Joshua. We want to be great men like Moses or Abraham. We want to be great men like Paul or Peter, all these heroes of the faith that we see in the scriptures. We like to be spiritual giants like them, mature followers of Christ like them, men who God uses like them. We all want to be these guys. But you know what? If you want to be Moses, if you want to be Joshua, if you want to be Paul, every one of them had to be at this same point that Joshua is leading the nation in right now. They all had to make a choice. They all had to make a decision. Who am I really going to serve? Who am I really going to live for? What am I really going to let lead my life? Is it the Lord, or is it somebody, something else? That's your choice. That's my choice. Moses had to choose it. Joshua had to choose it. Paul had to choose it. Abraham had to choose it. They all had to choose it. You have to choose it. And so do I. And I say like Joshua, as for me and my household, we will serve the Lord. Have a great day, men.